Hey.
Hello. I love
Oh
that your
my,
glasses match your headset.
yeah, the headset that works.
It's a vibe. I love it. Hey,
And
it's a
this
Christmas
hair, oh my
miracle.
gosh. It's rained here, it's snowed here, the wind is insane. So I like, it's like, whatever.
Yeah, it's so funny because it's rainy here too, and I mean it's like not, it hasn't stopped raining at all. Like it's just been nothing but rain. And I was talking to my boss, and he's in Utah, and he's like, "Yeah, it's just so rainy here." I'm like, "Oh, it's rainy here too." I'm like, "That's weird." Usually I don't have the same weather as everybody else. I don't know, especially out west. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're all rainy. Maybe it's the hurricanes. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I just heard about it. I don't pay attention to that, but uh Heidi, one of the gals that works with me, was telling me there's like a category 5 hurricane going towards Jamaica.
Yeah, I think it's called Hurricane Melissa. And I
Mm.
only know about it because I have a friend named Melissa. And so she was joking, you know, about it. Cause like the commentators, when they talk about hurricanes, they're like, oh, yeah, Hurricane Melissa is unstable. And
Yeah.
we
She's
don't know
like,
what
I'm
they're
unstable.
doing or what they're, yeah, and she's like, oh God, like it was just, but then she said to, like, joking aside, like this is serious, and she's been actively posting like updates and information about it. So yeah, that's how I know about it. Honestly, I get all of my news and information from the internet. So it's not from TV and it's not from a news channel. So yeah, that's how I know about it too.
Yeah, I usually get all my information that way too, either social
Yeah.
platform or somebody I know tells me. That's the most common because I don't watch any news, but it's funny because like she was talking about it, they're already saying it's going to hit as a category 5, which isn't that common, I guess, is what she
Yeah.
said. I don't know. But I was sharing with her, I said that's so interesting because just last week one of my energy mentors that I follow was specifically talking, and I've talked about this before on the podcast too, about how the energy patterns are shifting and they're becoming
Hmm.
everything's happening a lot quicker now.
Hmm.
And she was specifically talking about because Mother Earth is also shifting, like
Hmm.
get prepared for extreme weather, like category 6
Hmm.
hurricanes and stuff like that. So when she said that today, I was like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what she was talking about.
Oh yeah, I believe it. And especially after experiencing like the 1 in 1,000 year type flood situation just last
Yeah,
year, like
that never should have, I mean, in
happened
theory, wouldn't
in
happen,
theory.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And like I had mentioned in the podcast too, like I've gone back up there and I got really emotional. I went on a hike last week and like I just took some time. I don't even know if we've had a fun recording schedule, folks, in listener
Oh,
land. So I don't even know if I recorded this. Maybe I did, or maybe I set it into the air. Who knows? But when I went on the hike, I got up there and I sat down and like I truly just like smelt the wind, listened to the wind, and like felt the wind. And like you can hear just the leaves brushing, and it's just so quiet. And it's like below me is true wildlife. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what's below me, and I'm just sitting in nature, around nature, surrounded by nothing but the calm. And I just got really, really, really emotional. I started crying because I just thought about like how resilient, like from just a year ago, like nature is our greatest teacher. And we've talked about that on a lot of
hmm,
episodes, but
yeah.
the resiliency of nature, like the trees didn't just give up. They bloomed again. You know what I mean? Like they didn't say, fuck, that's happened to me and I can't do this anymore. Like they did it again. Like they came back, and they did it. And the calm and the peace and the beauty that was surrounding me. And I just looked out into it and I'm like, you would never know. You would never know this even happened, and it was just very moving to me. And, I'm very, very, I love this region. I love this area and the mountains here. And it's just really, really fills my soul to be here. And so, like, I don't know, it just really was cool to just think like a year ago, this was a whole different area. I mean, it was destroyed, and to just see it bloom and beautiful and the leaves and the activity of just the wind, and it just bends and nobody questions, like the tree just,
Yeah.
and then these beautiful birds were flying, it's just amazing. I'm like, This is so cool. Like, why are we not doing this? Why are we doing Teams meetings? Like, what is wrong with us?
Well, it's so cool that you talk about that because it's like you're right. Like nature had this, brutal thing a year
Hmm.
ago, but it doesn't hang on to that. There's no
Mm-mm.
memory of, well, why bloom again or why grow again because what if this happens? Like if you think about it in our human emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it just recovers. That word you use, resilience, is so beautiful, right? It
Mm-hmm.
knows naturally what it needs to do. There's no going back, there's no projection in the future. And that's kind of, the episode that we released this last week, talking about being in that silence with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
allowing yourself to come into true presence and really being present in the moment, and how powerful that energy is. And that's what that is, right? There's no projection or reflection. Nature just does what it needs to do
Mm-hmm.
without any concern,
Yeah,
So that's
and it
really
also,
cool.
yeah, and it made me think too, like, as you're talking, I have all these, like, I'm like, oh yeah, this is so cool. Like, this is in line. I don't know, my little light bulbs are going off if you,
Hmm.
in little inner workings of my mind. But like, it makes me think of, right. When we think about our own selves and our past, like these trees and these leaves and these hills and the valleys and the mountains aren't worried about the past. They're moving forward and nobody's looking at them thinking, "God, you were ruined last year." We're all looking at
Hmm.
them in the beauty, in the present, in the moment, right? And that's just like us. Like, if we really truly look at the beauty and the presence of ourselves in the moment and in present, and not look at, like, the past doesn't define us, just like it didn't define these mountains, it didn't define this area. There is a path forward, and we do bloom again. The trees bloom again. And I saw this thing the other day, which is really cool because I do like science, and I think science is interesting. And I think, I value some of the science that I learn. And it's very cool how some of it ties into spirituality and like science and, like, it's just neat. So I was reading this article, or it was like served to me on its content, and served, I mean, as in like I got an ad or
Hmm.
you know, I got marketing lingo coming out right now, but it came to me on the social media, and it
It
was
arrived.
about how time doesn't move in a linear line. It's still linear, but it doesn't actually move in a line. They're saying it folds. And like the image was like the circle. And so like time just folds. And so it was kind of like basically saying like the past isn't really the past, and what you do in the present actually changes your past, which is so cool, like based on the structure of time, like with the research they've done, and from like a spiritual standpoint, and from, just in general, like well-being and your mindset. Like, that was so cool when I read that, because it's like based on what they're finding out now is if time really does fold, your present impacts the past, and it's not actually as linear as we and our monkey minds believe it to be, or our mindset believes, or what we know, or what typical people understand time to look like, or what they believe time looks like. So I thought that was really cool. Like, spiritually, you think about that. Okay, so what I'm doing today in the present is impacting the past. Like, you are actually redoing that timeline, or you're healing that timeline, or you're working on that timeline. So I thought that was really cool. And I think that fits into the same subject, like the way that time moves forward and who we are in the moment is so much more powerful than I think we give credit for, because either we're looking behind or we're looking forward all the time.
Yeah, that's really an interesting thing. Time is such a hard concept, right?
Hmm.
Because we have been programmed with this linear mindset around time.
Hmm.
I don't believe that's,
Hmm.
yes, for us humans, that's the way we function within it. But to your point and what that was talking about, to me, it's like all time really exists in the same moment. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, and I truly do believe what you're saying. Like, everything that you're doing in every moment is changing history and
Hmm.
changing your future. So what
Hmm.
you do with time is important. The old saying, time heals all wounds. I don't believe in that at all. Time has
Hmm.
nothing to do with it. It's action that you're doing within that time. How are
Yep.
you approaching time? What are you doing with the
Exactly.
time? Because I wrote this down as you were talking. You said, we do bloom again. Well, you're right, nature does, because it just does what it naturally is intended to do without, well, that tree next to me has fuller leaves than me. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not going to grow.
Or they're
It
more
doesn't
red
think
than
like
me. Yeah, I want their
exactly.
hair color.
Yeah. But you're right, we can bloom again if we choose to bloom again. And maybe we will, but it's what we do. I've seen people, I talk about this, I think I've said this on this podcast before. Like, I have a family member who lost her daughter, which is tragic, no doubt, over 30 years ago. And she has stayed in that grief, and her life has not been explored in anything but grief for 30 plus years. Like,
Mhm.
she's not experienced anything but that. That defined her, and it stopped her growth. I sometimes say she might as well have been in the same automobile accident because she's done
Yeah.
nothing with that time. I know other people who've had similar situations who have chose to let that situation let them live even more fully, be even more present, be serve themselves even
Mhm.
more, right? So it depends on how you're approaching it and what you're doing with it. Time just exists. What we do with it is what's going to define ourselves in the present and your lineage going back. I do
Mhm.
ancestral healing with a lot of clients, and when I work with them, I'm like, you will be changing patterns forwards and backwards
Mhm.
just from doing the work in the present moment.
Mhm.
It's really, really powerful. So that's
Yeah.
kind of similar to what this study said, which is
Yeah.
scientific.
Yeah. I know, that's what I mean. Like, it's so cool because I was reading
Yeah.
the science, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, oh God, well, that like is exactly similar to, when you think of, I call it this, I don't even know, this spirituality space. Whatever. Labels are labels. No one likes labels. But if you had to give it a term, like this thinking and when you think forward or when your mind's expanded, that's a lot of the belief structures and systems of like-minded people in this space, right? And so
Yeah.
I thought that was just cool. Like, oh, the science says, the science, I don't, I'm not like one to be like the science, but I was like, oh, cool, that's cool. Like that just was another, like, oh, I can get behind that, because that's cool how the people that are bored and studying time, I guess, that have that job, I don't know,
Yeah.
agree with me,
I study
I was like,
time.
cool. Yeah. So it was cool.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. And I mean, it really ties into one of the things that we were going to hit on today,
Mm-hmm.
really the concept of reincarnation, which has come up a lot for me lately.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't, so it must be something that we're meant to talk about or it
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't. It's come up with me in some of the content that I've consumed. It's come up with me with clients. It was really interesting. I worked with a client just yesterday where we did a hypnotherapy session. And in the hypnotherapy session, I was taking them to a space to meet what's called an inner council. And this is my belief is that prior to your incarnation, you have a team, a council is what I call
Mm-hmm.
them, that help you kind of identify certain things that will happen within that incarnation to
Mm-hmm.
help your own soul's growth, right? Like, there's no coincidence of who you're born to, where you're born geographically, where you're born in the birthing line, if you have siblings. All of those things are relevant to your own soul's growth. And so, as we were working through this, it was interesting the way that she was getting data in the hypnotherapy session. And when we were kind of reviewing it after I brought them out of the session, out of the hypnotherapy, I said to them, I said, you just weren't sure, like, your soul's energy in this incarnation, as you weren't sure what you thought of reincarnation as I was having prompting these questions. And so the way you were receiving data was really abstract because of that. And they said, absolutely. Like, until we were in that session,
Mm-hmm.
they said to me, I hadn't even thought about it. Like, never had it
Yeah.
cross my mind. So I
Yeah.
wasn't for or against it. I just hadn't even given it any
Thought.
thought, of where do I stand on this, or, so it's just interesting how you and I had talked about it. It had been coming up, and then it came up again just yesterday
Yeah.
with this client. But ultimately, I do believe that we're reincarnated. I think that there's many ways that that can
Mm-hmm.
happen. I think there's probably a lot more ways other than being a human. But one of my mentors was talking about this a few weeks ago with reincarnation. And sometimes I think, because I do believe in it, I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, no way. Please don't bring me back. Do I want to go through this awkward teenage stage again? No, I don't. I don't want to deal with it all. And they were talking about the two things that prompt reincarnation,
Mm-hmm.
and two words. One is longing and one is regret. And I started thinking about that, and it makes a lot of sense. Because if you have a deep regret about things, like you're leaving your body and you regret, I didn't do this or I didn't do that,
Mhm.
you're going to be prompted to come back and complete those cycles, right? Or a deep longing. And a longing could be like, I dated Jim and I dated Bob, and
Mhm.
damn, I picked Jim and he was kind of a douche. And
Yeah.
then I'm watching Bob like be the best dude ever
Live his
to
best life. Yeah.
Thelma, or whatever. Like, you, yeah, living his best life, being the best husband, and like, why in the hell I didn't pick Bob? Like,
Yeah.
that's a longing, right? Or, maybe you chose not to have children and you always longed for children, or, you know, those kind of things. So
Yeah.
then that prompts you to try to complete that cycle. So, very easy to talk about, very hard to, as humans, to start to not allow those things to really
Mhm.
impact you, right? Because I was thinking about that, just regret. I'm like, and I've worked through a lot of this, but do I have anything that I would truly regret if, like, I was ready, the time, divine timing transitioned
Yeah.
me tonight? What would I
Yeah.
have regret around? And I don't, at this point, I'm not sure I have any, but maybe I do. Maybe subconsciously I do. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
No, when we talked about it last week, I had wrote down longing, and something that came up for me because I was like, because we had talked, and like I mentioned earlier, folks, like the scheduling's been a party, and then our technical difficulties has been even more fun. So I had some time to like think about like what
Hmm.
does the word longing mean? Because I think about it to
Hmm.
me, and I think about like in my current state of mind, like longing. Like I was like, I don't long for anything. I was like, what do you mean long? I was kind of like, okay, longing, regret, and like I've worked through things that I would have maybe labeled as regret. I don't think they really were a true regret, but I feel like I had labeled them as that. So I've had to work through that since I gave it that energy. I put in that energy to make it feel regretful, I guess. But the thing that I wrote down is longing is the soul's echo. And I thought that was so cool when I was like reading about like defining longing. Like, what does that mean? And it's like the soul's echo, where you're just yearning, or like a
Hmm.
nostalgia that doesn't seem to belong to this life. Like, it didn't belong in this moment. It didn't belong in this current carnation. It didn't belong in this current timeline, or it belonged in another timeline or in another life, and you're longing that the soul remembers, and you're longing for that again, because that's something I thought about too. Like, what do we remember, right? Or what
Yes. Yeah.
what am I yearning for? Because like in this current space, I'm not sure, like I don't feel very yearny. I don't know what the
Yeah.
word is, but like you're right, subconsciously there could be something. There could be something because it's just not the part of me, my soul, the fragments of my soul, whatever, the makeup of me could be longing for something from another timeline.
Yeah, I think the important part is figuring that out, right?
Yeah.
So, like an example would be for me, I did not have children in this lifetime.
Mhm.
Okay. And in my earlier years, in my 20s and 30s, there was a longing energy to have a child, right? For me to have a child. And I went
Mhm.
through trying to do that, right? However, what was really interesting when that started to kind of unfold, anyway,
Yeah.
two things came up in that whole longing. The first thing is there was a lot of societal pressure or programming around, like, that's just what you did. Like, in the area that I lived in and the
Mhm.
people I was around, it was like you got out of school, maybe you go to secondary education, you get married and you
Mhm.
start producing children. Like, there was this pressure around it.
Mhm.
And I was always getting asked about it. And so as I started to unpack like that whole energy system, it wasn't truly my longing
Mhm.
from that. It was other people's longing.
Mhm.
And I'd let those society pressures and that programming make me feel like it was a desire from me. The
Mhm.
second part of it was I started to do past life regressions.
Mhm.
And I had been a mother in many lives. in multiple ways, right? So bringing that energy forward, like because I'd done it in the past and there were some beautiful experiences and some heartache
Mhm.
experiences with being a mother and probably a father, that energy was still within me. But when I really tuned into, okay, what is going to serve me in this lifetime? I came to the most peaceful place of I wasn't meant to birth a child. Like, and I
Mhm.
truly don't have a longing around that. And it's interesting because a lot of people, like my friends, I get this a lot. I think they don't truly believe me and they say things like, but you are a mother, you do mother. And I do. I
Mhm.
100% mother. I mother plenty of people, right? But it's, yeah, I mother you. I mean, I do mother.
Yeah.
It's just not in the same way. I already have that skill. I can do that
Mhm.
for people. But it's almost like they want me to see that in myself, and I already do see it in myself.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to mean it has to come in that one way. There's multiple ways you can have that expression.
Yeah.
So that's just one example for me of really getting through a pattern of longing and what it truly was for
Mhm.
myself.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that you brought up like other people's beliefs, and like really we take on their energy and then it starts to kind of, I think of it like a snowball in my opinion. Like it just, like honestly as you're talking I can feel it in my gut. Like I can feel those feelings cuz like truly I have two beautiful very healthy children, yeehaw. And like I don't really want a third child. I don't. I know I don't. But I know that what around me, I see like my family, my brother-in-laws have like four or five kids. My brothers have over three to four kids. Everybody's got multiple groups of kids. And I've noticed like when it comes up, like my family will be like, oh, well, you had two really difficult births. Like they're justifying why I'm not, why I don't want more children, or like there has to be like a reason, and I feel, and I know that I've taken on some of those energies and those beliefs and those
Hmm.
wanderings and questions, but like I really don't want a third child. And I love children.
Hmm.
And honestly, I do have a third child that it's not with us. It's in another existence. And I know that, like, and I
Hmm.
don't regret not having that child either. Like, because I wouldn't have Draco. I just wouldn't have done it. I didn't
Yeah.
want three children. And so for me in this life, I needed Draco, not that soul. And I know that soul loves me and I love that soul, and it served a purpose. And there's nothing that I need. Like, I don't regret not having that child. I don't regret like needing that child in my life, and but like as you're talking, like I could feel I got to work on things because I've been attaching to people's energies because I made an executive decision to biologically stop a third child.
Yeah.
And I stand behind that decision 100%, but it's the energies so I just wanted to call that out too. Like when we start attaching to other people's ideas and justifications, like it's very human of us, right? To be like, oh, well, did I need to do that? Like, should have done that? Like, but I know that I don't want more children. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Exactly. I know exactly what you mean. And I call those like you take on little contracts from other
Mm-hmm.
people, right? All the time because we're exchanging energy. And what happens is they have their own comfortability and their own beliefs and they project it to you. Most of the
Mm-hmm.
time it's not in a conscious way, right? But
Yeah.
they might say things like what you were just talking about. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you had two difficult births, so no wonder you're not going to have more kids. Or
Mm-hmm.
they try to like they do it through manipulation, like it's so beautiful to have five kids or a big family and it's
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate that you'll never experience that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, these things have been said to me, you
Oh
know
yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, hell, I avoided every freaking high school reunion because I did not want to answer the question of why I didn't have children.
Mm-hmm.
People are always trying to make their comfortability your reality, right?
Yeah.
It's what we do. And so I really try to be very aware of that about taking it on, but I also try to be aware of if I'm putting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes I'm doing it to other people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because of my own conviction or my own belief structure, and I'm saying things to them and I've had to really watch that too. I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to make them come into my sphere for my own comfortability. It goes
Yeah.
both ways, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, it's something you definitely have to really be aware of. And it kind of goes back to the only way for us to do that, I truly believe, is the more present you can be, the more you can become aware. And
Mhm.
that kind of goes back to that episode that we released a few days ago on getting still, getting present within yourself. And it's like a training ground so that when you're not in a meditative state or you're not in a calm state and you are in a conversation or you're in a group of people, you're preparing yourself to become more aware of that. But it won't happen without you giving yourself that time. It just won't.
No, I agree. And I think about that too. Like we had a really great episode about advice, right? Where
Mhm.
it's like I when you're talking, I related to the part, am I putting soul contracts out there on someone else? Am I putting my energy out on someone else? Because I can give people advice all day long, but like my experiences are not their experiences. And I don't actually know how they feel in that moment. I mean, and I do believe in advice. I do believe in coaching. I do believe in guidance and information. And sometimes I do believe though but now, I'm more conscious and aware of what advice and quotations am I giving to someone? What am I putting out there? How am I answering this? Cuz I believe in being truthful and I do believe in being authentic. So I want to express myself fully and communication is how I do that, and I want to be helpful, but I've really I've thought about how I'm saying those things to someone so that it's not a projection, it's not this soul contract for them to take on of what I think it should be because I'm living this life and I'm healed. I'm just kidding, or whatever. I'm on this enlightened path. Like, I really think about it. So it made me in terms of what you're putting out there, it made me think about that and in the context of advice and information and that feedback loop as we coach or guide or whatever situation we're in with others too.
Yeah, and that's so true, and it's difficult to really have an awareness because we have our own patterns. I know one of the things I've been working on, and I've not been great at it a lot of times recently, is there is a pattern in my ancestral lines, like my grandmother, my mother, like that feminine energy line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they know they're lecturers. They're going to tell you how to do it, why you should do it that way, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I find myself doing that sometimes. I've really had
Mm-hmm.
to have a heightened awareness around it. I have gotten better where I can hold space for people. And I've been trying to use words like, do you just want me to listen or do
Yeah,
you want
no,
some
really.
feedback?
Mm-hmm.
But I've noticed a little bit in some of the more sensitive situations and with a couple of people that are in my life every day who have been struggling, I tend to go back into that familiar pattern and I start to give a little lecture like to them. And it
Mm-hmm.
was funny because they said one of my close people the other day, I'm not going to mention who they are, but they're struggling. And in the dialogue, they said to me, like, can you just please stop lecturing me? And it was like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
that word triggered me to know that's exactly what I'm doing. Like, and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not going to move them out of the space with telling them
Mm-hmm.
everything that they're doing wrong. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. So I had to take a step back and really think, how am I showing up for this person? That's not how I want to show up. But
Mm-hmm.
it's going back to that self-awareness and recognizing, man, I come by this honestly because, man, it's a lot of generations that
Oh yeah.
like this lecture mentality.
Oh
So I've
yeah.
really been trying to show up differently for this individual, just like in love, in letting them be where they need to be. And it's hard because you see somebody that you care about not doing great, but
Oh yeah.
also I'm not going to lecture them out of it. The best thing I can do is truly come in with unconditional love and provide that to them.
Oh
And
yeah.
whatever that
I
journey looks like for them, support it.
exactly. Yeah. I would say, yeah, I come from lecturing folks, men and women, and this is not even just on the feminine side, it's on the masculine. It's everywhere, right? We're all these communicative people. But it also comes in form of lecturing. So I also have really I'm trying to think of a humble way of saying this because it sounds not so humble. I tend to not be totally wrong. I'm semi right, but it's not about being right. Like that's something I've had to learn. It's not about actually being right. Do I believe that in sharing, I am very intuitive, I feel very gut led, and I do follow on with instincts. I had an experience today, totally should have listened to my gut instinct, should have canceled the appointment, should have done it, not even went, and it was a fireball of a piece of it was not even worth like an existence. It was awful. Okay. And I should have listened to myself. So I do I am more in tune. I do listen to things. I try to be intuitive to a degree, right? Does it make me all knowing? No, I'm not all knowing. I'm not a crystal, I'm not a personal crystal ball, but I have not been totally wrong sometimes, right? So, like, I do trust my intuition. I do trust my
Yeah.
gut, but it comes off as like, I'm right, you're wrong. And
Yeah.
that's not okay, or like, I've done this, I've had to just start doing the same thing myself where I've talked to people and instead of lecturing people or even giving advice anymore, because I've found when I start giving advice, things start getting sticky because a lot of people come to me for advice, but they don't always take it, and that's okay. Or they're just seeking more validation, because that's another thing. People seek more validation when they already know, like they already know the answer. Or it depends on what's happening in these exchanges. And so I've started asking people, like, am I just here to listen? Because, like, I felt like before, sometimes if people are coming to me, I ended up just talking over them and not intentionally. And I didn't talk, not when they're speaking, I didn't talk over them, but I just start giving advice automatically.
Hmm.
Like, and so it can feel very lectury, or it can feel very like, I don't even know if lectury is a word, but it can feel that way. It
Sure.
can even feel like I know everything and you know nothing, or like I'm right, you're wrong, or even argumentative. And that's not the space or energy or the way I want to show up for people. And so I've either not, sometimes I don't even need to give advice. I actually listen to my gut. And if they're not actually communicating to me what they're seeking, I can typically I've been starting to pick up on it. Like, in this space, I'm not holding back. It's just actually better for me not to, I don't need to give any information from me on this end. Like, it's not needed in this moment. And so I've been really listening to myself on that and how I'm presenting myself, because I am very talkative. I mean, this is it. Like, I annoy everyone. I mean, this is it. Like, my voice, hello, this is my gift. And it can come off in many different ways, And so
Hmm.
being in tune with this gift is the best way I can show up for somebody. So whether it's asking the questions, whether it's understanding the need, or even just listening to my gut, I know the way I need to show up for that person and in what headspace that I need to be in for myself too. Like, is it helpful? Is it not helpful? What is this dialogue that's about to take place?
Yeah, I think that's kind of that space of listening to your own intuition, right? Because that is reading the you're talking about it, reading somebody's energy and what they need from you.
Hmm.
If you're truly present with them and you have an awareness outside of yourself, so many people, this is a difficult one because sometimes people are so in their ego energy that you're telling me a story and I'm really not holding space listening to you. But I just start, as soon as you stop, or maybe even before you end, I start to tell you a similar story that happened to me, right?
Hmm.
You see that a lot in
Hmm.
conversation. That's ego energy, right?
Hmm.
Then there's a difference between vulnerability energy,
Hmm.
meaning like you have the intuition to share, okay, that happened to you, Myra. And what I mean by vulnerability energy is sharing a story of your own vulnerability of how you overcame something similar or what that looked like, right?
Hmm.
Kind of like what I just shared, because I do think people learn through stories, right?
Yeah, I do too.
Give an example of what longing could be and what
Hmm.
caused that longing, right? Or sometimes just knowing that all they need is to be the star of the moment and don't
Hmm.
take that away. And what I mean by that is you just show them empathy, you
Oh
just
yeah.
show them love. You just like it's unfortunate they were going through this. Know that I love you and I'm here if you need me.
Hmm.
Like sometimes that's what you need to say. But
Oh yeah.
it's reading that energy. And I think that's people can't do that unless they know themselves well, right? Because a lot of people are still walking around in ego energy.
Hmm. Oh yeah. I have a close person in my life who is very much an ego energy, and everything's a lecture or it's me. And that's okay. And
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. Like, and people around me are like, how do you have these phone calls with this person? And trust me, I've had to do a lot of protecting myself. I don't tie myself to these energies anymore. And sometimes I just don't answer or I hang up. Like I've learned boundaries on my personal availability. And honestly, since I've put out boundaries, it's gotten better. You know, I've put out the energy like, hey, this is what I want in my life. And so these phone calls, these conversations don't happen as much as they used to. And it's been good, right? You know, but when I am in these moments or do pick up the phone or do have these conversations or whatever context it is with this person, I've really learned that they need to be the star. That's what I've learned because they are fully in ego energy, 100%. And they are self-aware though too. They do dip into the self-awareness. They have a very high, they do have a heightened sense of self-awareness, but the ego overshadows. So the conversations are very fluid. I mean, they see everything, but then they go back into ego. You know, like it's a very interesting dynamic. Like it's just a lot of, really I look at it as a spiral. They're not spiraling, but like their conversations just go in circles or into a spiral. Like it's just a very odd dynamic, and it can be a lot, and sometimes I just don't do it or don't engage, you know. But the other day they were very expressive, and something that, you know, like they've had a lot of variations of challenges come up in their lives. It is the exact same pattern though, right? So they are going through these cycles because they've never really healed from the cycle. It's just going to keep showing up for them. And this conversation that we were having really boiled down to, like, they were trying to pick a fight with me, and I honestly wasn't being aggressive. Like I just made a statement like, hey, I really hate you feel this way, but that wasn't the intention. And to be honest, I don't even know how we arrived to this space. But I'm going to go ahead and hang up the phone now because I'm no longer going to engage in this conversation. Because like I'm not going to be guilted into feeling away either. Like I didn't do anything. So they got really weird and they're like, don't hang up. Like, what? What do you mean? You know, because I was ready to just say, okay, I'm not going to say, I could have said a plethora of very terrible things and hurtful things to this person. I could have projected onto this person. I could have done a whole lot of things in this moment, but I chose to say, you know what? I love you. And I did. I said, I love you and I'm not mad. And then I'm like, I'm just going to end this conversation. And they're like, well, don't be so mad. Like, you're being defensive. And I said, I'm actually not being defensive in this moment. And I'm not going to be made to feel this way. I'm not, because I wasn't being defensive. I just was standing my ground. So the conversation shifted, etc. But really the root of the conversation, you know, because we've talked about it before, the problem, the root problem is never, or the surface problem is never really the problem. There's usually a root thing going on.
The problem isn't the
And
problem.
basically
Yeah.
it's security. Like this person is continuing, they long for a family. And by family, I mean like the standard definition of societal family. Okay. And they long for that. They want security, ultimately security in their relationships, partners, security in their job, and security in their relationships, like even with children. So basically it's all just security. That's all it is. They need security. If I had to put it in a bow box, it's really the bottom of it. And, you know, they just kept bringing up like all these past things, jobs, people, relationships, life, this, that, and it was just continuing the past. And I'm like, why are you know, with this individual, it's like, why are you keeping these things alive, right? You know, you were just keeping these things alive, only you, but ultimately this person is still longing for all of these things. He's longing for this past that didn't exist, or these people that don't exist anymore, or these relationships, or he's longing for something out of this job or career that's not there. And, you know, and I said, you already know these things. You already know. And they're like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, okay, if you already know, then what are you doing? Why are you even asking me for advice? You know what I mean? Or like, so this is an example of that star. Like they need to be the star. They need to be this star in the moment. They've got a lot of things going on. And sometimes that it's just best if I'm not giving advice. And sometimes it's best if I need to just end the conversation and that I'm not attaching myself to this individual or these energies because they are going through all of these different patterns and flows in their own life. That's just going to continue to show up no matter what I say or what I do.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And the interesting thing about it is that will never shift until they feel security within themselves. They're searching for security out here,
Yeah.
and they're probably like repeating, well, this person did this and this person betrayed me in this way and
Mhm.
blah, 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 blah. And what people don't understand is that will continue to be the pattern until you find the security within.
Yep.
And the only way you can find the security within is to go in and feel the emotion that caused you to get into those patterns,
Mhm.
like that familiar energy. So, what I mean by that is this individual, if you looked back at their childhood, somehow they probably were around chaos or drama, or that was part of their existence, right?
Mhm.
Never feeling totally secure, probably from
Yeah.
one or both of the parents.
Yeah.
Then they've continued to create that,
Yeah.
and I was just working with a client around this just the other day because they're like, yeah, I see that I do this, like I create chaos, but I don't know how to stop. And I was like, okay, let's think about a time in your childhood. There will be a time that's going to come to your memory where you were shut down. You were, maybe, like, I remember for me, one of mine was I was a pretty good kid, but I was like 8, 9. I was at my grandparents' house and I was like having fun, just playing, being loud, singing, dancing, like literally by myself, like just chilling.
Mhm.
And my uncle was there, and I'll never forget. He's like, "Can you just shut her up?" That was one of the traumas I had to go in and heal because I remember like just starting to suppress my voice, suppress my energy, right? Because this adult like kind of came at me.
Mhm.
And the only way you heal that is to feel the emotion. There's a book called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die,
Yeah.
meaning that in that moment I suppressed a lot of emotion.
Mhm.
And you have to go back into that pinpoint those little timelines and feel the emotion. This person is asking you for advice, and we're thinking in the 3D mind, and you
Mhm.
can tell them all of the things, and they might even want to do something differently, but until they do that and their vibration can shift, that will never change. You see,
Mhm.
that's why these cycles keep going
Oh,
and
yeah.
going. They may even say to you, I want this to shift. I want to do
Mhm.
something different. They may intellectually think that. That's where that deep patterning comes from.
Mhm.
Like, that's the piece that people miss. And you've got to do the work to get there.
Yeah, I 100%. I think about like 300 people, not really 300 people, but so many people, like, and
Yeah.
that's all I've been saying to people recently. Like, I dealt with another individual this week, every day they think of a location and they're like, oh, I hate that location, or I would say the location and they're like, I would, like they wanted me to already know that they hated it, like,
Yeah.
honestly, they're like, Tennessee. And I'm like, I didn't, what about it? You're the only Tennessee. I don't know. Like, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, so like little things.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I'm never going to. This, honestly, my key takeaway from this week is I've been listening to how other people talk too. And I've been listening to, like, when you become aware, you also become aware, like, of others, and the way they're talking. And I'm like, I do not even use language like that anymore. Like, did I ever sound like that? Like, and so, anyways, it made me think about that. But this week I've heard the variations of language. I've been with a lot of different energies and a lot of different people, mostly masculine energies, all the different situations from one familial line, right? So I've been
Yeah. Yeah.
listening
I
to
got
lots
it.
of things
Yeah.
all week. And that was one of them. This individual's just like they're longing constantly for this relationship, or they're longing for this future, or they're longing for something. But I finally I've started telling people too, I'm like, you got to start with yourself. I honestly, you can hate Cindy and Jenny and JoJo and whatever, Jim Bob too, I don't know. Or you can be mad at Tennessee, for God's sakes. I didn't even know Tennessee did anything, like, or
Or
you can be
Tennessee.
mad. Yeah, like, damn, I was like, okay. Or you could be mad at McDonald's monopoly. I don't know. But until
I didn't
you,
get
like,
Boardwalk and Park Place.
yeah, like, for God's sakes. Hey, I'm missing one railroad. But if you're out there, anyways. And so, like, if it starts with self. Oh my God. And so all
Yeah.
I've done is
Yeah.
just walk around. And when people start saying, like, when I'm hearing these things, I'm like, it starts with yourself. And, I even had a friend today and they're like, hey, this She sent me the text from her other friend, you know, we're not mutual friends with this person, and she's like, I just replied with all the knowledge you've given me. And she's like, I started telling her, and she's like, I was telling her this and telling her that. And so I'm like, okay, someone's listening, you know. But it was about self. Like, this person was trying to fill their lives with more children. They were, or a new job, or a
Mhm.
new this, or new this, or new love, or new life, or new partnerships, or a new home. Like, they're trying to fill themselves with all these material items without first reflecting on sense of self. Like, where am I at? What am I doing for me? What am I doing that's like these other outside things we're searching for will never fully heal us. And you know, I think, like, bringing it back to the episode topic, this is where we can really work through that longing, the regret, the karmic residue of these past lives, even this current life, like really setting down and just thinking, like, what is the unfinished energy? Like, what do I, so, or even asking ourselves, like, what can I bring to the surface that is maybe in my subconscious or that I'm not really thinking of in this moment, to really work through, you know, whether it's writing a letter to your past self, forgiving yourself now, forgiving your past self, forgiving whatever that is that you recall or can call back. You know, I've mentioned it on here, and I'm really big on the cord cutting, doing cord cutting meditations or any of that clearing around those attachments and really releasing any of that, like I said, karmic residue or any of those ties that either bind us to this current timeline or those past timelines.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's huge, right? And then not taking those on, like having that
Mm-hmm.
sense, like what we talked about earlier, having the sense of awareness in the conversation of they're projecting their comfortability or their quarter, or
Mm-hmm.
am I projecting mine? And really trying to hold space for that. And it's hard because, I even find myself doing this. Like you see or hear somebody repeating the same thing over and over and
Mm-hmm.
over, and then you start to get into a little bit of judgment energy. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you're the key person in this, and that's not going to help either. It's that
No.
energy of unconditional love that's the healer of everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? And letting and trusting that they're on their journey in the exact right time that fits them. You can't rush things either for other people. You
Yeah.
don't get to do that. And sometimes we want to because we see family members or friends who continue to bring in situations that don't serve them and continue the
Mm-hmm.
pain. I think one of the best questions you can always ask is, when you're in your meditation or you're in your intention or prayer, whatever term you feel comfortable putting to it, is like asking your guides, asking the universe, asking your higher self, asking your heart, how is this situation serving me? And when you change your dialogue to that, most people are in victim energy. Why is this happening to me? Why does this keep happening? Okay, but that's a whole different question. How is this serving me? That's where that term you used, karmic residue, really starts to come into play.
Yeah.
That's where you really start to understand it. So use
100%,
that.
folks.
Yeah. Well, this was great.
Yeah. It was a great episode.
Yeah. Thank goodness we finally got to do it. Tech,
I know.
everything
I'm
worked.
like, these people have no idea this wasn't,
I have
it
no
was a
clue.
party.
It's been,
Yeah.
anyhow, not your problem, people.
Nope.
Until next time, keep your vibrations way high.
And stay sassy.